tabloid papers. They said it was for the best. I found out they were
There are
wrong.
two times you get to be in front of the audience. The first one is when you come on, and the second one is when you leave, right? So I'm going to ask Ken to step up. I think we're on here. Okay. Ken, we give you your name plaque. It's a real valuable item, okay? But more importantly, we give you this recognition here for 11 years of service. Congratulations.
Thank you very much,
We'll miss you
Dan.
dramatically. And now you get an opportunity to say a few words. It's the only time you get to do that, right?
Well, yeah, only 11 years. It seems like so much longer. Well, first of all, let me give recognition to the person who put up with my absences for so long, my spouse, Phyllis Mumford, Sovereign, who would check in regularly on the cable channel. And at your places, as unaccustomed as I am to making a pitch, at your places you'll see a table of organization for a new project that AARP Iowa is doing in conjunction with the city of Des Moines University, Greater American Partnership, all the usual suspects. And right now we're organizing 3 work groups around infrastructure, around social capital, and around health services to, if you will, ramp up to a plan that would cause Des Moines to be designated by the World Health Organization as an age-friendly city. We are the 3rd city in the United States that's been accepted into this network. New York City, Portland, Oregon, and Des Moines. And I'm proud to say that we're going full bore with this. So in addition to Christine, who's already agreed to be part of the planning committee, the leadership committee on this, I would like another volunteer from the Planning and Zoning Commission to be engaged in this process. And I would also like to ask for 5:30 time on your schedule at some date soon so that I can go into some detail. But again, I can't thank you enough for the privilege of serving the city of Des Moines on this great Friday. It was a fun and educational 11 years. And as I told somebody when I first came on board, and I was used to lobbying up the Capitol, it's a whole lot different dealing with public policy when the people that are directly affected by the action are standing in front of you rather than an arm's length away. My boss at the time always told me, never take an office where it isn't a long distance call. Well, thank you again. Thanks, Dan. Thanks to the whole commission. You've been a great support over the years.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and get the meeting started. Welcome to the City of Des Moines Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for February 2nd, 2012. It's been a year. No, not a year. It just feels that way. Okay. This evening, the Planning and Zoning Commission rules and procedures are as follows. The Planning and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make final decisions on all matters before the Commission other than site plans. The Commission's decision to approve or deny a site plan is the final decision by the City unless the applicant appeals to the City Council. You'll need to contact the City Clerk or Community Development, boy, that's tough, Community Development Department staff for details on those council hearings. This evening, the applicant will be given 10 minutes to present the request after a presentation by staff. Proponents and then opponents are allowed to speak, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes, strike that, 5 minutes for rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed, and after a motion, the Commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the issue under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed. There are 2 of those, and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report unless an individual present or a member of the Commission requests the item be removed from the consent agenda and separately considered under the public hearing agenda. The City of Des Moines is pleased to provide accommodations to individuals or groups with disabilities and encourages participation in city government. To better serve you, when possible, please notify us at least 3 business days in advance at area code 515-283-4209, should special accommodations be required. Assistive listening devices are also available in the council chambers. The Planning and Zoning Commission meetings are also broadcast on Mediacom cable channel 97-1 or on channel 86 for digital service customers. The broadcast is also streamed live on the City of Des Moines website at www.desmoinesgov.org. You need to click the Watch Live link. Of course, you won't be here, but you can still do it that way. Bert, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
All right. Quorum being present, has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Any discussion? Seeing, you're going to move them. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign.
I'm accusing myself.
We got two abstentions. Okay, let's take up the consent items. There are 2 of those. And as I indicated, if somebody wants to remove them, they need to rise and let us know that. The first one is request from Available Material Handling LLC owner at 607 Southwest 27th Court, represented by Anthony Holt, for vacation of the following public street segments to assemble with the adjoining property for site development. That's Shaw Street from Norfolk, Southern Railroad to the North-South Alley, and Southwest 21st Court from Scott Avenue to the Norfolk Southern Railroad. Is anyone here in opposition to that item? Any of the members decide to move that? Okay. The second one's a request from St. Anthony's Catholic Church, 1808 Southwest 1st Street, represented by Monsignor Frank Chido, for vacation of the west 8 feet of Southwest 1st Street adjoining the subject property 112 feet north of Edison Avenue to allow for extension of community gardening. Is there anyone here in opposition to that particular item? In opposition? Okay. Seeing none, anybody else want? All right.
I do want to pull that.
You want to pull that? All right. So we'll pull that one and put it back on. So do I have a motion to move the consent?
Do you to it?
Oh, wait, you're right. You want to move it? Anybody else want to move anything on to consent? Okay.
I don't know if it's communicated. We have spoke with the applicant for item 4 is here tonight, and they concur with the staff recommendations, so that would be one. And then I didn't know if there's any interest in 5 and 6. But
So that's number 4.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. We'll have it heard.
Okay.
What about number 5?
I have a question about 5.
Okay. Is it a question or?
It's a comment. It's a request.
Okay, that's fine. We'll go ahead and do that too. So item 1, is there a motion to move the consent? Jack? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation. Bert. Okay, item number 2. Once again, request from St. Anthony's Catholic Church, 1808 Southwest 1st Street, represented by Monsignor Frank Chido, for vacation of the west 8 feet of Southwest 1st Street adjoining the subject property 112 feet north of Edison Avenue to allow for extension of community gardening.
Chair, members of the commission, Jason Van Essen with the city's planning staff. The aerial before you shows the subject right-of-way. You can see it's it doesn't include any travel paths. It's along the edge. The applicant has developed garden space in the area. The site sketch is showing your bus garage and then the garden photograph. The fence was constructed into the right-of-way for them to go through the process of kind of bringing this into conformance. You know, they need to be able to vacate the right-of-way and then either purchase or lease it from the city. And then the next step after that would be obtainment of relief from the board for the height that exceeds the height allowed in the front yard setback. There is a letter before you from neighborhood president questioning the project, and I believe he suggests this lot over here for the garden. Staff has talked to the applicant about this area, and as we've been informed that this, you can kind of see it here, has been a gravel parking lot, and for this to be converted to garden space would take an extensive amount of work. So we are recommending approval. We we are recommending, though, that it only be a lease. This area, you might recall, a few years back, we went through the planning process for the, kind of coined it as the Two Rivers District. Eventually amended the city's land use plan, changed zoning in this area. You might recall that had been before you. Given the opportunity and the potential for development in this area, we feel that it's in the best interest to retain ownership. So at some point in the future, whether that's 20 years down the road, we have the ability to guide that a little more than what we would if we sell what land we have. This is a similar process to how we've approached alleys and that sort of thing in the downtown. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jason. The applicant's here. Please come forward, give us your name and address.
My name's Mark Paris. I'm the business manager at St. Anthony's Church, representing, or here on behalf of Monsignor Chido. We're from 15 Indianola Avenue. And as the situation was well spoken before as to what had happened years ago when this garden was constructed by a parishioner or volunteer, just unknowingly extended it further than probably what he or she should have. And so now we're going before this body to request a vacation of that.
And you understand what the recommendation by staff is? It would be the
Yes.
lease.
Yes, we understand that.
All right.
I have a question for the applicant. Is Southwest First Street paved? Is that the street that's referenced in the letter is not being paved?
No, I believe that section where where the piece of property in question, that is
Yes.
paved. I believe that.
What is the letter referencing that's not paved? Or am I not reading it correctly?
If might interject, I think maybe the letter's referencing that these streets aren't paved in urban cross-section. They're just basically a crown blacktop with no gutters. Second is, or yeah, ditches. Second, I'm not sure is, I'm recalling that that's maybe gravel. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, thank you.
Jason, I think also on that, we did look at what the minimum right-of-way was necessary to do a local street through there. So even in the future, if we did go through with an urban cross-section, there still is enough room, even with that 8 feet vacated, to put in a.
That is correct. That
public
was
street with
looked at
curb and
by
gutter and sidewalk.
traffic and transportation. Really, our concern with the lease and the area really has to do with its long-term development potential as being adjacent to downtown.
Any other questions?
My question, Mark, was it Mark?
Yes.
The comments that Jim Post made, I put a lot of stock into his opinions. And I just want to make sure that we have dialogue, just like we would with any other business in the neighborhood, to know that they have the nod that they say that they're okay with this. And have you had any meetings with the neighborhood to see, if it's so? It sounds to me like he has, well, more than one concern. And I just want to make sure that, like I said, dialogue is happening with the neighborhood associations.
And I think that's a fair point, and I think that's something maybe that St. Anthony's can look to improve on and to have that. Mr. Post is a parishioner at St. Anthony's, and so that opportunity exists to strengthen that dialogue. So I agree that St. Anthony's maybe should have more of a presence at those meetings and try to engage in the neighborhood more. So I accept that recommendation.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mark. Is there anyone here to speak in, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? In favor of the application, please come forward. Seeing none. Those in opposition to the application, please come forward. Likewise, seeing none. Mark, you don't want any rebuttal time for yourself, do you? All right, good. I'm going to close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to move staff.
All right. Mike's moving staff. Any discussion?
Just one comment for staff as I look at the plan, and we don't need to discuss this or decide anything today, obviously, but this seems to me to be a segment of street that would be a candidate for closure and vacation completely. As I look at a piece of property, I don't know my directions, but I'm looking at the drawing to the right, a triangular piece that's not developed. That would be very difficult to develop. I think a larger piece could be assembled at some point. And as you work your way upward, you're in a very odd triangle on a very busy street, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the Two Rivers plan actually did kind of show it being closed, but at this point, without, that assemblage occurring of properties, we have to maintain access, public access to the lots that has it today. So definitely something can be considered in the future.
Any other discussion? Joanne?
I just have a comment on Jim's comments on the traffic that's through there. The traffic through there is to avoid a busy intersection, and it's not that prevalent that you run into a problem on this street. So I don't understand why he listed that as a reason for not allowing it. So we're not going to be changing the fencing, we're just allowing a right-of-way. So I think I will support this anyway.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and call the question. Oh, Tim, did you have something?
Yeah, I did. My other concern, he also mentioned that if we did pass it, it would go to Board of Adjustment because of the fence, and has that been addressed by the church? Or can we save time by having that?
They have submitted an application, I understand, but right, that's correct.
They don't have ownership, so they can't.
But they have to go through this process first, so.
Okay.
Anything else? Seeing none, all those in favor, please, staff's recommendation, please signify by raising the right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation again. Carries. Okay, moving on to item number 3. Request from F&J Mobile Homes, represented by George Jordan, to rezone property at 7657 US Highway 69. Bert, are you presenting on this one?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Bert Ross, planner for the city of Des Moines. The request is to rezone a portion of the site from C2 to M1, light industrial. And in speaking with the applicant before this meeting, he said that they have since removed the sliver of R5 from the request, so they're only requesting the C2 portion be rezoned to M1. If you see on the sheet map here, the yellow line represents what we originally had in their appeal, but in the blue line is zoning, but they've since amended their request to only consider the C2 portion. The subject property is located on the north side of Southridge Boulevard as it curves between where Bloomfield Road ties in with Southridge Boulevard, and then south of the Southridge Mall complex. It's just north of the interchange with the Highway 5, Highway 69 bypass. And just to give you some background, this area here was originally part of the mobile home park. They had their septic lagoon in this area. Since tying onto city sewer, they no longer needed their lagoon, so they were able to pave over it, or not pave over, but grade it over. Back in 2003, they rezoned the site from R5 to C2 to allow fully enclosed mini warehouse use. That is never developed. But then, fast forward a few years, 2006, they went to the Board of Adjustment to get waiver of paving in order to let the ground settle before they paved it, and that allowed them to use it for a storage lot. They went to the board a couple of times for extensions of paving. However, since it's zoned C2, C2 doesn't allow for a storage use. They've only been able to use it for the storage accessory to people living in this mobile home park here. So at this point, there's a lot there, but the only thing it can be used for is storage by residents on site here. So there has been some enforcement and some violations of them leasing to non-residents. So there are pending issues there. As part of their use of the site for storage by the residents, they had to have the site plan approved by the city's Permit and Development Center. So you can see they have, the original plan called for paved drive aisles with asphalt, and then the storage areas would be recycled asphalt material that's considered dustless. They later amended the site plan to only do the one driveway down the middle with storage around this, and they had the hammerhead here for fire. And this is how the site is developed today. I'll show you in the pictures. So right now they're technically only supposed to be parking off of this, immediately off of this asphalt driveway. And again, right now it's only supposed to be by residents of the mobile home community. Here's a photo of the site looking at it from the driveway from Southridge Boulevard. Here's another view. So you can see the existing asphalt driveway goes through here, and the vehicles currently aren't stored immediately off of here. They are stored back just a little ways and closer view. This is looking at it from Southridge Boulevard. You can see there's kind of a ravine between the highway and the storage lot. And this is,
Doesn't like
well,
it.
doesn't like this picture. This final picture, if it shows up, it's just showing the relationship between the highway at the left and the storage lot on the right.
Kind of a dizzying
So,
picture.
I apologize for that. And then the consent map, we had cards come in from the adjoining property owners, all in support. Yeah, I'll put that picture back. So here's the picture. You can kind of, this right at the front of the,
It just doesn't like that picture.
doesn't like me. The front of the photo is the driveway from Southridge Boulevard to the, it goes to both the mobile home park and the, did it go? Well, shoot. Okay, yeah. So you can see the ravine between the boulevard, Southridge Boulevard, and the storage.
Southridge is just over the hill. Southridge.
Yeah, Southridge Mall would be back over here, yeah. So staff has concerns over rezoning a site along Southridge Boulevard to industrial. We just feel that this is one of the primary gateways to the city of Des Moines from people coming up Highway 69 or from the bypass. So we don't feel that rezoning this to allow an industrial use would be appropriate. We do realize that it currently is used for storage. This rezoning wouldn't necessarily change the use. We just feel it would make it much more intense. Right now, it's limited to residents of the mobile home park, and I believe there's like 70 or 80 units here, but we feel that limiting it to those people would greatly control the impact of the storage lot. So we've recommended denial just on the basis that this isn't an appropriate location for industrial. We feel there's better places in the city's industrial parks. So, any questions?
Any questions?
Bert, I do. How do you police knowing that one of the mobile home owners is putting their boat in there? How is that?
There has been a pretty lengthy history in the 5 years that that's been there. There's been numerous enforcements. I know zoning inspectors have had to go out and document all the license plates and match up, and there was clear evidence at that time that they were leasing to non-residents. So there's still pending enforcement cases.
Mike, just on
Yeah, Tim, also, I know at least one of the violations that was cited on the property was storage of for sale units from another. There was illegal expansion of a display lot on Southeast 14th Street that was cited, and they were told to move the illegally displayed units off of that property. Well, they ended up showing up on this property at one point. So they've been cited, I know, previously for selling, having some units that weren't licensed, that they were for sale, new units.
Anything else? Joanne?
Knowing that the SFRP had made the big welcome to Des Moines sign on the area just south of it, it really has a great sight line to this little spot. And to have it turn into an industrial parking lot is not something that I know for a fact that they would not appreciate
Right.
that. So,
Why don't we get that? Why don't we get that when you
huh?
have an opportunity? Do you have any questions for Bert?
Other than his question about policing it, because I also feel that in policing it, you know, just, you can tell if he's doing something wrong just by looking at it, because there aren't that many. So I'm wondering if this would be allowed. It would be difficult,
Yeah.
I think, to
Well,
police it.
If the rezoning is allowed, then we wouldn't have to police it because he could be leasing it to anybody and everybody. But if the rezoning is denied, then we'll have to continue policing it to ensure he's only leasing to the residents.
So either way, it'd be kind of difficult.
Okay. Any other questions?
And that welcome
you,
to
Bert.
Des Moines sign that Joanne was mentioning was just right at the corner of this map. So.
Okay. Is the applicant present, Bert? Yes. Please come forward, give us your name and address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Jim Nervig. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Brick Gentry, 6701 Westtown Parkway, Suite 100 in West Des Moines. I'm here as attorney for F&J Mobile Homes. Also here today is George Jordan, president, and George will speak briefly after my presentation. We want to be very clear, this is a conditional zoning application. We're not asking for full M1 zoning. All we're really asking for is the ability to store recreational vehicles of off-site vehicle owners, in addition to the storage of recreational vehicles of on-site owners. And we're asking for nothing more, and in fact, our application for rezoning was for a conditional M1 use limited to that use only, no more M1 uses. All we're trying to do is just allow what's going on the premises today, but to make it legal. We had a neighborhood meeting on January 23rd. All of the neighbors who were in the area for notification showed up. All of them were supportive after we got done explaining to them what we were asking for. Jim Bollard was there representing Easter Lake Neighborhood Association. Carolyn Machia and Richard Quigley, owners of adjacent property, were there. They were highly supportive after our neighborhood meeting. Also, George will give you a list of people he's talked to who are supportive. We don't have anybody that we have talked to that have not been supportive. And so what we're really asking is just for your indulgence to allow this type of use to continue. We're serving a need for individuals who need to park their recreational vehicles off-site. And as you know, most individuals with large recreational vehicles are not able to park them, on the streets or in their own driveways. They're looking for sites like this, and there aren't that many, around this area. So, again, and I know that the comprehensive plan issue came up. We don't in any way, shape, or form look at this as something that we would ever want to change the comprehensive plan for the area to make it more industrialized. Again, the only so-called industrial use we're talking about is parking of identical vehicles that are already legally allowed to park there, but just vehicles based on the ownership of off-site owners as opposed to on-site owners. So I'll now ask George, you want to come forward and speak?
Thank you. Hello, folks. I think probably the simple way to start out on this would be to show you a few of the snapshots that's been taken over the years of the location. I don't know how they work. That's one there, and what we're talking about here, originally, the lower left-hand corner was where the sewage lagoons were until I got city sewer. That's where we're talking about, that area. A little bigger shot of the sewer lagoons there. Another farther shot from it is down over there in the far corner. This shows you the neighborhood, basically. Mobile home parks, residential people, so there's no desire for an industrial area there.
Mr. Jordan, where's the, would you give me the back one, the one you just showed, and point out where the site is, please, on that photo?
Right-hand side there.
Be the right-hand side up there.
Where the water, yeah, thanks.
See it?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And this is the shot of the area. Of course, that was winter. Chain link fence around the top and all that, and you can see how they're lined up. Another situation of winter. We have a electric gate that's operated off of a push button opener for tenants that live there. Another winter picture. Then this shows the driveway down the center that the city said, or the fire department said I put in. So that goes down through the gate to the far end of the place, and there's about a 60-foot length of blacktop down there for when a fire truck pulls in. He goes down, turns right or left, back up, come out. Of course, with this ground asphalt, we don't sink out of sight. This is showing grading out the area. To lay that. Another shot of that. And I don't know if this was a state man with the backhoe or city man with the backhoe. He's down there and he digs that ditch out. And you can see trees that I've put in there, and I put them in the east, south, and north side of the property. Just another one of the units lined up in there and that type of thing. Same thing. So I guess that pretty well covers the pictures. But the principle is, and I realize this went on for several years, but I feel we're trying to help people out that have boats, motorhomes, travel trailers, that type thing, that they can't park in their driveway or on the street where they live. This way they've got a chain link fenced area. I live right up Bloomfield Road myself, and I've got tons of excellent people that live in this park. My other park is on up the street a ways, and I'm taking care of both of those parks. In fact, today I talked to 16 tenants that live in both parks that have a unit there, as well as 20-some people surrounding area that was recommended by dad, mom, aunt, uncle, whatever. And as you can tell, I don't have any sign out there. I don't advertise in the paper, nothing. It's strictly a word-of-mouth type thing. And I never had one complaint today over the storage area. The biggest comment I got, George, we really appreciate the way you take care of things. And that's basically all I'm after, because I understand I'm in trouble for renting out to people that don't live in this particular park. But when you're talking approximately 3 acres for like, let's say 15, 16 units, that doesn't even cover the cost of the electricity on the lights that we've got on the place. And the gentleman over there a little while ago commented about my having a motorhome company in there with non-licensed motorhomes, that type of thing. I apologize for that. I didn't realize that. Soon got it straightened out. Won't happen again. We do not have sales down there. We don't have service down there. So it's a situation, strictly a storage situation.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I might make one comment after George's presentation. I think the thing we also want to emphasize is, you know, the unusual shape configuration of this particular parcel and its adaptability to other uses. I mean, this is the type of non-intensive, quiet, non-dust producing, non-traffic producing use that would be compatible with the area, and there really isn't any commercial use that this particularly low-lying, odd-shaped parcel could be put to. So we'd ask your consideration on that basis, that we're trying to put a piece of land to a reasonable, practical, beneficial use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
Is there anyone, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward. In favor of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Jim, are you in favor or opposition? Okay. Those people on the fence, no.
Yeah. Well, Jim Ballard, 4007 Southeast 26th Street, president of the Easter Lake Area Neighborhood Association. We did meet with the attorney and a representative of the applicant, and we did talk about being in favor of it based on all the conditions that were just talked about, that the use would solely be limited to this. We talked about what conditions, and unfortunately I didn't get a chance to call anybody in the planning department in advance here, but any conditions around vehicle conditions, whether it be that all vehicles need to be licensed or some condition on the vehicles, limit to the amount of vehicles that could actually be placed in there based on the size and so forth. So we were willing to work with the applicant to say that it is a place where there's not a lot of other uses, but we certainly aren't in favor of it being zoned as an industrial piece of property. The current use, although illegal, is probably an acceptable use for that space because of what else can go in there as it sits today. So if there's some way to get all those conditions onto it, and as we spoke with them, and you've heard me here before speak to this issue, which is the owners may be very nice today and they may want to put only good stuff in there, but the zoning goes with the property gets sold tomorrow and we're looking at crap. And that's why I keep coming back here. So I don't know what sort of conditions we can put on to their request that would limit to this kind of use, but if they do that, we would be in favor of it.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none. Anyone to speak in opposition to the application? Likewise, seeing none. Mr. Nervig, you need any additional time?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. Do we have a motion? Jack?
I have a question, probably for our staff.
Can we get a motion on the floor first? Okay, Jim's moving staff. All right, go ahead, Jack.
Limited M1 use, Mike or Bert, aside from parking motorhomes and recreational vehicles and boats, what would that encompass?
Well, it sounds like they would agree to the condition that it would be limited to M1, with the only use being those uses in C2 or the storage of recreational vehicles.
Mike?
I guess additional things that, had we recommended approval of this,
Right, thanks.
probably would have included screening, landscaping around the perimeter. I mean, we are kind of challenged because the grade at South Ridge Boulevard is higher than ultimately the site. So I'm not certain how much is going to be screened by landscaping, but we definitely would want to look at that. Obviously, fencing. Typically, when you have a storage facility, it would have some sort of opacity to the, or opaqueness to the fencing, rather than just a chain link around the exterior of it, things like that. If the commission is supportive of maybe approving the request, I really would maybe ask the applicant whether or not they would entertain a continuance to the next meeting to allow us time to work on conditions that might address those concerns. But at this point, we've recommended to keep it to a limited nature by not allowing storage of commercial usage. I think Bert pointed out that in his presentation, I know the applicant had noted there was no other use for the property, but I think, as was indicated previously, there had been a storage facility approved on this, which would be like storage unit buildings on the property rather than just outdoor open storage on the property. Not saying that that's necessarily a better appearance, but it definitely would comply with the existing C2 zoning on the property to have storage units there where things are stored inside a building, but which was actually what was previously contemplated. So if you are inclined to recommend approval of the zoning, I would advocate for a continuance if the applicant would accept that to sort those issues out.
Mike, there's a couple of references in here to the rezoning category. One says, for example, on page 3, just in the first paragraph, the 2020 community character, proposed rezoning to the M1 light industrial district, okay? And then on page 1, in the requested action C, it's referred to as limited M1 light industrial district. And what I'm trying to do here is figure out the difference.
Well, as Mr. Jordan or Mr. Nervig referenced, when they applied, they asked for a limited M1 district. They said they would be agreeable to limiting the use to the only M1 use being the storage lot. So,
okay, so the owner self-limits or submits to voluntary limitation in the M1 district.
Yeah. Here's how the application was submitted to us. So on the agenda, it was noticed as being a limited zoning. So on the staff recommendation, I guess technically it should have said denial of the request for a limited M1. But.
Okay, so all I'm getting to is a limited M1, and the context we're talking about is a recreational vehicle storage facility, period. It's not light use M1.
That's how the
which would be broader.
Requires outdoor storage.
I guess another way of looking at it is we omitted the limited on page 3 from the wording, was omitted. The point would be the only limitations that are proposed at this time is just the usage. There is no limitations such as performance standards or landscaping, screening, buffering, things like that. So if you're inclined to grant limited M1 zoning on the property as a commission, then we would probably recommend that we come back with some additional conditions to address that, to address compatibility with the comp plan.
And I would also point out that the site, when they went through the site plans process, they did have to have a site plan that satisfied the C2 landscaping standards. And they have done that, and they have installed the landscaping in accordance with C2 standards.
Mike, did you have something?
If the motion carries that would deny this rezoning, does the applicant have the ability to go to the Board of Adjustment, and how might the Board of Adjustment requirements, if you will, does that, Greg is telling me that
would be their, if the city council denies the rezoning, their next step or their next course of action could be to apply for a use variance from the city council.
From the Board of Adjustment.
Or yeah, from the Board of Adjustment, sorry.
And if the Board of Adjustment grants that, does that run with the land?
Yes, it does. The board has the ability to put conditions on it, just like the body would have the ability to put conditions on the rezoning.
I'd rather have us do.
Any other questions? Mike, do you have a follow-up?
Well, before we vote, I'm kind of torn because coming to this meeting, I was prepared to say, I agree with staff, this is not appropriate. But I've also heard that from the neighborhood, which should carry a lot of weight, that they think with limitations, this might be acceptable. And if we think it might be acceptable, and I haven't made a decision yet, I would rather put the controls on it than to allow it to go to Board of Adjustment. Why wouldn't we put the controls on it? But let's see what happens.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, motion on the table right now is
one question.
to deny.
Piggybacking off what was just said, there is a comment about the history of zoning violations since 2006. So what is the guarantee that if there are further conditions placed on this site, that we will not have further?
Getting it. That's why I was going to M1, the limited M1.
Maybe that's a rhetorical question, but.
It is kind of a rhetorical question, but I like it.
So I'm
Jack.
still a bit confused. I see staff recommendation, I get it, and I understand where they're coming from. In my mind, an M1 district is a big box in which a limited M1 zoning piece could live. So that if we vote to take staff's recommendation, which is denial of the application, they're done on M1 zoning, because light or limited M1 is a piece of what it lives inside the bigger box of M1.
Right.
Actually, if the zoning was denied by the council, the only limitations that have been proposed have been on use. If they came back with additional limitations as part of a new application, it would be considered a new application if it was substantially different than what had been proposed before, which it's a technicality. It would not prevent them from coming in and asking again. They would just need to propose additional conditions at that point. So to avoid having to start the process over, if you're leaning that direction, see where your vote is on the motion that's on the table, and if you want to have this brought back to you, I would once again recommend in that instance a continuation so that we could come back with additional conditions if that's what the commission
So
believes.
if there are those on this commission who desire a continuation and we vote no on this motion, are we still done, or can there be another motion?
Well, if you're asking for a continuance.
No, I'm saying there's a motion on the floor.
I understand, but a continuance supersedes the motion on the floor.
Okay.
So if you're asking for a continuance and it's agreed to by the applicant, that would come up first, and then we'd vote on the motion.
Okay.
All right? Greg, did you have something?
Basically the same thing. I just wondered if we turned it down, what happens, and can we stop it before it gets there if that's what we choose? So Mike said that.
Okay, go ahead.
So for my part, unless there's more discussion, if the applicant's willing, I'd move that we defer, continue, along with the suggestion of Mr. Ludwig.
If the applicant comes forward.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the applicant would certainly agree to a continuance to work on conditions.
Okay. Do you have a comment?
I had a question for staff. Of the violations that they've had in the past, you mentioned that maybe they're being addressed now. What have they done to remedy those violations, or if anything?
I don't believe they've done anything. It's been well documented that they've been letting non-residents store on that, but.
And how long has this gone on?
Since it was approved by the Board of Adjustment, since
2006?
2007, yeah.
6 years.
There have been multiple citations.
Okay, thank you, Bert. Any other questions or comments?
And of course, that's part of my concern is the fact that I'm not sure how appropriate it is the main gateway to the south side, seeing all that, and he has the right to park as many as he'd like or whatever it's allowed to. It's just gonna just be larger. I like the idea of indoor storage rather than the outdoor storage.
Joanne?
Are the violations because he's parking vehicles from his other property on there, or is this just anybody's?
They're non-residents of the mobile home park parking there.
Okay, but he owns two parks.
They're non-residents of either mobile home park parking on this property also.
Oh, okay, so you are including the other park. Okay,
Bert?
They wouldn't be allowed to lease to other parks since
even if he owns them.
even if he owns them, it's limited to on-site storage, which on-site means part of this
Okay,
mobile home park.
yeah, I know he's not allowed. I was just wondering if that's what the other vehicles were from his other property, or were just anybody's?
Just anybody.
Just anybody's.
Jack, and I'm anticipating, although you haven't said anything, I'm anticipating you would like to make a motion to continue this matter.
I thought I did.
Okay, all right. Any discussion on the motion to continue?
I have
Mike?
one comment. I'm going to support this motion, but I will also say that I would expect there to be heavy buffering. I'd like to see a park along the public street, that in 20 years from now, it's something very attractive. Anyway, that's my opinion.
And my comment was going to be, there may be no solution acceptable to this commission as a result of this opportunity given the owner, but to the extent that this is an odd parcel, they're willing to limit the use if it could be done in a way that is consistent with city staff recommendations. Great. If not, we'll see them again, and it'll be over.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to continue this matter, please signify by raising your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion's continued, or the matter's continued. Tim, myself, and okay, it's continued. Let's set a date certain for the continuance. Jack, do you have an idea in mind, or 1 or 2 meetings?
Well, I would probably say 2 meetings, but the first one went to staff, they know their schedule, there's going to be some work required here.
We'll try 2 weeks. We'll try 2 weeks. If we're not able to reach
2 weeks or two meetings?
2 weeks
Right now.
to the
February 6th.
To the next,
16th.
February 16th? Or, yeah, February 16th? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think I'm out of line in saying this, but I think the applicant needs to understand that there's no guarantee moving forward, but we're allowing an opportunity to take another look at it, to see what kind of conditions could be put on the property.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to,
Going to be on vacation in 2
I'm
weeks.
sorry?
So they asked for March 1st.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
first meeting in March. First meeting in March?
March be okay? Okay. What's our first meeting in March? 6th? First? Okay, March 1. Everybody in agreement to March 1? Those who voted on this, you okay with that? All right. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, request from Thomas Yaw to rezone property at 931 Southeast 21st Street. The subject property is owned by Des Moines Metro Waste Reclamation Authority. Jason, you presenting on this?
Yes.
Thanks, sir.
Chair, members of the commission, Jason Van Essen with the city's planning staff. This is an aerial. The highlighted property is the property in question that's proposed for the rezoning. The applicant owns this facility that adjoins it. The subject property actually is owned by the WRA. This is part of a project that they're doing. They're constructing a large line through the area to the plant that's in the vicinity. And as part of that, they need to run the line through basically kind of the middle of the applicant's site. They'll need a no-build easement, and as they're sorting through this project, the proposed trade-off or trade or negotiation is to swap this for that easement. So the applicant would like to rezone this to be able to expand into it. They do have a conditional use permit for this use for this area. However, it was granted prior to our current standards that we have associated with conditional use permits. So as part of our recommendation, which we're recommending approval, we're recommending that the site be brought into conformance. As I mentioned at the start of the meeting, the applicant appears to, has indicated they're supportive of the staff recommendation, so I'm kind of giving you the quick presentation.
Jason, when you say conformance, what are you talking about?
Conformance with current standards.
Current site development standards.
What things would they need to do?
Drive aisles and the setbacks and screening, and there's a whole list within the conditional use criteria that the board has to consider and look at standard performance standards.
But doesn't exist currently?
Not on the site. The site this was developed prior to the current standards, so that is correct.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's the end of my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions. I did show the response map. We did not have any responses.
Mike,
So Jason, just to confirm that because the current site is not developed to the current standards, it's basically considered a legal non-conforming use. And so expansion of the use onto this new parcel is expansion of a legal non-conforming use that triggers a requirement for full compliance with our zoning ordinance.
Jason, I have another question to ask you. I'm looking at your site here, and the one area is a floodway. What is that? Is this standing water, or is that, are we looking at river, or are we looking at, what is that?
That's the Des Moines River? No, yeah.
Okay.
I'll let the applicant talk about the surroundings.
All right, and we're talking about M2.
This
Yeah.
section right here that you're
Oops,
seeing.
is that the-
This is a lake.
The lake, okay.
The river would be south of it.
Just south of it, okay.
Yeah, they call it Gilligan's Island. The people in the area, I don't have any idea.
And Jason, let me make sure of some other things too. That's not paved. This is dirt, right?
That is correct. This isn't right away. This is just land that's owned by the WRA, not the city.
Okay, and we're storing automobiles on.
The applicant would like to be able to expand their business. I mean, they could acquire this land and leave the zoning as it is, if that was, but for it to make sense, for them to participate with the WRA in this arrangement, they want to be able to expand their business, hence they need to rezone the property, get a conditional use permit after this to do that.
As I understand it, WRA wants an easement so that they can place their sewer lines in.
That's correct.
And then they're going to exchange that easement for this other one.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
The applicant can please come forward, give us your name and address. How you doing, Rick?
Good, Thomas Yaw, 2025 Southeast 5th.
All right.
And my name's Rick Olson. I'm a lawyer here in the city of Des Moines at 2635 Hubble. Obviously, we agree with comments by the city as far as a recommendation. This is part of a bigger contract that we've entered into as a swap for the easement that apparently the Reclamation Authority wanted. They're already in the process of doing some digs. I don't know if you know exactly where this piece of property is, and probably the reason you don't is because nobody goes there. The property immediately to where it says M1 on the large photograph to my left is where the city dumps snow that they have gathered, which ultimately drains in part onto my client's property, but to the larger part into the lake.
The lake.
And
whatever you want to call it.
Lake, pond, Gilligan's Island. But with that, Tom Yaw's in a better position to tell you what's going on in that piece of property and answer your specific questions.
All we want to do is be able to move our fence out, whatever that acre is, and expand the yard. I have no problem putting the concrete drive up through this section here. I don't wish to have to concrete all this over here, because once we do, then the water runoff fees go through the roof.
You understand what the conditions are that staff is also placing on you.
Yeah, they was placing that they had to put.
I don't want to go into the details on that, but you're in agreement with staff's
But they didn't say nothing
recommendations.
about the remaining piece that I'm already using. It was just the piece that we're adding. They told me I'd have to put a concrete drive on it, put the setback on it that they want, put some trees up. But I already have put trees up back here once, and the city went in and pushed them out because Corps of Engineers did not want them in there. So.
Okay. The condition, there was a revised staff rec that was at your table this evening, so there are two conditions. The first is, basically, it says that any separate use or development of the subject property, which would just be the hatched property. Jason, if you can move the staff rec for a minute. Yep. So can you move that staff rec, Jason, off there? So the first condition is tied to just this cross-hatched area on the aerial photo, which basically says any separate use of that cross-hatched area has to comply with the M2 district standards, which virtually every use in the M2 district requires a conditional use permit from the Board of Adjustment. Then the second condition is addressing use of the property of that cross-hatched area in conjunction with the balance of the storage yard. And that condition says any use or development of the subject property as an expansion of an existing non-conforming use on the adjoining property, which requires M2 zoning, shall require that the property, which is the crosshatch area, and the adjoining property devoted to the same use be brought into conformance with the M2 district standards. So it's not just the crosshatch area, it's both, the entire property. Now, when they talk about paving, the entire site does not have to be paved to be brought into conformance.
No, just
The drive aisles, and that doesn't have to be.
At this section in here, I do have this all paved, but it's a slow process.
So the drive aisles, and once again, paved does not necessarily imply that it has to be a concrete paved surface. We have dust-free approved surfaces which are allowed in the city, subject to our engineering department's approval, which have in the past been a recycled asphalt milling, and then basically the areas where you're storing things just need to be rocked or whatever.
Most of this over in here is brick and broken concrete that has come out of the buildings downtown.
Okay. Well, we would have to work with our engineering department to concur with what is an acceptable paved surface.
All right.
But condition number 2, I need to clarify, does require both the crosshatched area and the remainder of the site to come into conformance with our current zoning standards for a salvage.
So what you're suggesting is to make this deal work with the Reclamation Authority, and they're going to give us a little over an acre of land, we need to bring 5 or 6 or 7 acres, 11 acres, thank you, Tom, of existing property that we haven't had any violations on, up to today's specs. That's what you're suggesting? It seems like it might be cost prohibitive, and maybe this deal should go south.
I guess that's I'm clarifying what the recommendation says so that we're clear on what's here. Your client had stated something that was contrary to what was in the staff recommendation, which I wanted to point out. So ultimately, the city council has to approve the zoning of the property. This is a recommendation to the council only. So if that condition is not agreeable, you either have to point that out at the council meeting to the council that it's not an agreeable condition, and they have to decide whether or not to, apply the commission's recommendation or not, so.
I understand.
I want to first say I thought there was a better understanding, so that's why I kind of glossed over stuff. But the other thing that has been mentioned, though, is that if that condition is not there, let's say the rezoning is approved with no conditions even, this is a legal non-conforming use, and for that to be expanded, the zoning board of adjustment would have to grant a variance to the provision that does not allow legal non-conforming uses to be expanded. So even just a blank zoning, there would still be an additional step to go through to be able to expand onto this, even if the zoning is approved without limitations.
Are we clear, Rick?
As the movie, say crystal.
Crystal. Okay. You guys have anything else?
No. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward. Please give us your name and address.
Tony Holt, 2222 East 31st Street. I just like to say that we need these kind of industries, and we also need to realize that there's a limited amount of M2 ground even available to buy. There's very little out there to purchase, and I think that these industries are very productive. Yes, we need to control them, but they're a needed resource. I suggest we support it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. Likewise, seeing none. Rick, do you need any more time? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing. Do we have a motion? Moving staff. Any discussion? Jack?
Just that I think my friend Mr. Olson may have hit the nail on the head, that could be pretty expensive to do what staff is recommending.
Let me say, and this is one of my hot buttons, frankly. We've got a place where we store cars with heavy metals, and those heavy metals go somewhere. And in this case, they go into a waterway. And when we rezoned all those properties against M2, the reason why I was so vehement about that rezoning is because of this very issue. We have, as a history of our culture, built places where we dispose of waste into waterways. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending upon your outlook, those waterways support things like people who drink water and people downstream who have to deal with those wastes when they get them downstream. We have flooding. Nobody's going to deny that. And when it floods, that water rolls over that property and it goes into waterways, and now we've got a problem. I, frankly, will never support an M2 zoning anywhere near a waterway. And so I just want everybody to be clear that that's kind of one of my hot buttons. I've been doing that for quite some time, and nothing against this guy. I'm sure he's a fine businessman, but the problem, as a matter of fact, I know he's a fine businessman. I spent some of my youth in his facility. So that's kind of my statement. Anybody else?
While we're on that subject, can I ask you a question?
You may.
What happens if they bring the whole 11 plus acres into compliance and they put what we're describing as pavement in these alleyways? Does that enhance the problem that you foresee with runoff?
I think you're right.
Or does it
no, it doesn't
help the situation?
It doesn't mitigate the circumstances whatsoever.
I thought that
what it does is knock down the dust by paving those areas, but it doesn't do anything as far as worrying about those heavy metals that we're dumping into a waterway that's going to wind up in somebody's lap, probably those people in Ottumwa. So
There are requirements when they do the paving to then make
Catch it.
stormwater improvements to catch runoff, so.
And then am I seeing a levee here? This kind of stripe by the
believe so.
south
Yeah,
end?
that's a levee.
Apparently it doesn't work.
Did it work in North Dakota or in New Orleans? How many more you want me to cite? I'm sorry, Jack, I'm giving you a hard time. Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair,
Will.
I have a question. If the deal does not go through, the Wastewater Reclamation Authority is going to be unhappy. What can they do to penalize the applicant to get their way?
Well, I don't know that they, frankly, the Reclamation Authority, I don't know, can penalize the applicant. What they're trying to do is acquire the property.
I would guess they would probably negotiate more in a cash deal for the easement, and the land would not become part of the process, would be my assumption.
Anybody else? Tim?
I just have one comment. I kind of a hobby work on cars, and I've gone to all the junkyards in town, and I do believe that Mr. Yaw runs one of the best, most organized. And as far as walkways goes, he's right. There's a lot of broken brick in most of it, and it does absorb the water. I know it does, and it's not walking around in mud like most of them. So I just wanted to bring,
I'll be real honest. Unfortunately, Mr. Yaw gets penalized for our behavior in the past. Yeah. At some point, somebody's got to draw a line in the sand, and unfortunately, Mr. Yaw happens to be in the middle of that line. So, Jack.
My observation earlier was this is just a massive recycling program, which is something that is highly in favor in our community and elsewhere. And it's unfortunate that it's situated where it is, and it would be so expensive to move or to comply with staff recommendations. But that's just
And Jack,
recycling is good in a general sense.
Yep, and Jack, we've approved some sites that are recycling efforts with vehicles that don't sit near waterways. So, anything else? All those in favor, we already have a motion on the table. The motion is to approve staff and actually, I guess, do we need to break this down, council? We got A, 2020 community, and then rezone it to M1? Yes. All right, so we're going to break it down. We'll break it down into A, which is to determine whether to propose rezonings in accordance with 2020 community character plan. I think it's no, isn't it? What's the recommendation? Not? It is? It is, okay. All right. So all those in favor of A, which is it is in conformance with 2020 community character plan, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation. That passes. Now let's go to B, which is rezone the property from N1 light industrial to M2 heavy industrial to allow for expansion of the adjoining salvage yard. Any question on that? Jack? Okay.
Sometimes the wheels take a while.
That's all right. It's all right.
Are you reading from the most recent handout?
Oh,
There is
sorry.
subject to condition.
Well, subject to conditions, but what I'm saying is,
There is no B on this one. Is that
Yeah,
it?
it's a typo.
Okay.
It's a typo. It's A and B.
A and B.
It says A and
Still
C.
A and B.
on there.
The one is 2020 and the second one is approval with conditions. That's the difference. I didn't read the conditions. You want me to read those, Shirley? I can.
Well, what I'm saying is, on this original one that was sent in our
Right.
packet,
Didn't have the conditions on
items
it.
1 and 2 are different than what the one is tonight.
So it'd be the revised staff rec that you had this evening. Yeah.
Right, right.
I'm looking at the revised.
Yep, you're right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? 2. Will and I. Okay. It does pass. Okay, item number 5. Request from Newbury Management Company, represented by Jack Levy, Officer for Review and Approval of a Site Plan under Design Guidelines and NPC Districts for Multiple Family Residential Design Guidelines on property located at 2714 Ingersoll Avenue to allow the existing 3-story building to be renovated for 22 multiple family residential units. The subject property is owned by West Bank. Jason, are you presenting?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Aerial identifying the subject property on the south side of Ingersoll, just to the east of the 28th Street intersection. No written responses to the site plan. This is a photograph looking at subject property, existing building. You can see the drive to the west of the building that's on the property. There's a photograph showing the drive to the east. The east drive is a shared. The property line goes down the middle of it. The western one is on the subject property. This is behind the building. There's a couple levels of what's left of parking and old parking, or an old garage building. This is looking back towards the rear of the building, towards the north.
Is that garage building part of the subject property?
Yes, and it's proposed to be removed. And you can kind of see this building back here, these are a higher grade and they face Grand Avenue to the south. Just the property line is basically back behind the building there.
If they're going to convert this to residential, why would they want to get rid of the garages?
I'm guessing based on my inspection that they're not interested in that. They're in pretty poor shape and
Okay, I'm just curious.
I staff the Historic Preservation Commission, big preservation guy, but I'm sure that the garage is, it's small and costly would be the response. This is just looking back down that drive that's to the west of the building, just so you can get a sense of how it interacts with the parking, with property to the west.
Can you actually get a car down that drive? It's not a 1931 or 32 Ford? I'm sorry.
Fuel efficient vehicle.
I'll shut up.
All right, so here is the submitted site plan. Shows the existing building, reconstruction, and I have another drawing of the rear stair area, the pavement alterations with the new pavement, new parking, that drive to the north, and this would be this is a corner more so now, it'd be kind of cut off so you can pull in there. So there's the parking requirements for NPC, as you know, are reduced. There's more stalls than what's minimum required. They're also doing some Ingersoll streetscape improvements. We'd want to work through the details on that with them, just to make sure that the pattern and the tree pits and the tree species are all appropriate. What's shown appears to be a little bit off, but obviously that's a detail that we would work through with them through the administrative process. We made that as part of our recommendation.
It really doesn't like it,
No, it does not. The camera is ready to go home, I guess. There's some elevations, the front elevation, rear elevation, east and then west. And then I have a close-up here. The rear staircase. It's basically, you're looking at the staircase on the side. It's an open-air structure, except for it has a wall, a screen wall. It's not 100% opaque. There's actually space in between the boards. It's more solid down at the bottom. You can see the stairs behind here, but you wouldn't actually be able to see the stairs as I understand it. That's just stairs across, to give you a sense of the run of the stairs. And then it would become wider as you get up towards the top. not sure that I'd mentioned, this building has been vacant for an extended period of time and has lost its non-conforming rights or legal non-conforming rights. It does exceed the 22 units that are there in relationship to the lot area. It's just a little over a 20,000 square foot lot. Do exceed the design guidelines range in NPC for lot area per dwelling unit. So that is an area where they would need waiver, or if you say relief, to be able to reoccupy the building. The other is design guideline that it doesn't comply with. As Dan noted, the drive aisles are narrow, and so they don't meet the current standards. But the NPC district is a unique district in the sense that all the bulk regulations are design guidelines that you have the ability to interpret versus sending this to the zoning board of adjustment. If this was a different zoning district, they'd be going to the board of adjustment for relief to those drive aisle widths and the density. They obviously, there is criteria within the code that you're supposed to consider when you are going to vary from the design guidelines. There's I'm going to push my luck with the camera here and see if I can get zoomed in. And then one of them is D, a need to preserve an existing building. There's other ones that talk to unusual lot shape, smooth transition between existing development. In this case, I think it's pretty obvious that we have an existing building, so they meet that criteria that the board is, or excuse me, the commission is supposed to consider when looking to waive the design guidelines. Other than that, it's the NPC district was really created to preserve the historic development pattern. Actually, it was based on Ingersoll. And this certainly fits into that criteria. So we are recommending approval of the request. We have just a handful of conditions. Obviously, we speak to the need to waive the lot area and then the drive aisle width, but also want to make sure we comply with administrative review comments. We want to work with them a little closer on the Ingersoll streetscape improvements. I'm sure Greg could tell you the things that I'm seeing there that are a little different than what we've spent hours working on. So we want to make sure that was done correctly. And then 3 is just to make sure that whatever we don't know coloring for the replacement windows. We want to make sure that they're a dark color so they blend in with the brick and not be bright white, which wouldn't be appropriate from our design standpoint.
Jason, so everybody understands, this is a site plan. This is not a determination with respect to zoning.
That is correct.
I have
Will?
a question, Mr. Chair. Jason, have you or the property owner or the developer come across an historic image of the building?
I'm not aware of that. I do know from talking to the applicant's architect, they had initially hoped that this would be something that they could pursue historic tax credits, and that they weren't, when they went through that process, that it wasn't determined that the building was eligible. I don't know within that research if they identified any historic photographs of it or not. We didn't have any on file that I was aware of.
Well, they should have hired me. I would have. But that's not what I meant. That's really not really not. I can even show you I've done my P's and
It's just
Q's
a
here.
plug here, guys.
Yeah, right. Okay.
We need the time for the commercial.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The lawyers have already done it now.
I still do have a question, please. Sure. I think, and it has to do with the windows on the front of the building. The windows really are the eyes of a building, the way they are of the eyes of the people, and so their design really is an important factor. Absolutely. Because you actually see that so very clearly. And I think that that staff was correct in looking at the proposed 6/6 design that was originally proposed by the developer, and finding that really wasn't appropriate because of the design of the building and when the building was constructed. I asked the question about the historic image of the property because this is one of these buildings that could be either way. It could have had 6/1, or it could have had simply a 1/1 double hung sash. And since we don't know, we don't really have a way to justify one thing as opposed to another thing. Now, the guidelines in a case when you have insufficient information to make a determination is to make the design as simple as possible. That way, since you are acting out of ignorance, you're choosing, as it were, the lowest common denominator that's most likely correct, rather than trying to put something into the window that may or may not have been there.
Sure, and
So the point, if I could just finish it, is that instead of recommending the 6/1, I think 1/1, the way the rest of the building is designed, would be more appropriate and perhaps even cheaper.
Yeah, no, I share your concern about the window pattern. I know that the first question I asked the architect was, the windows that you can see, the windows in this picture are that. At the time I had the conversation, I hadn't gone on site and looked at them up close and asked him, are those original? Because it just seemed a little unusual, and those are actually like 10-year-old vinyl windows that need to be replaced already. So I share your concern. I guess where I had thought that that perhaps 6/1 would be okay is that I think it's pretty typical of a building of this style to have that, but that's neither here nor there. I certainly, I completely know where you're coming from. That's where, on all things, when I staff the Historic Preservation Commission, whether it's building a new porch or putting in new elements or anything like that, from a preservation standpoint, you start, if you don't know what was there, you go with the simple. Sometimes we look at, other patterns and other examples, and in this case, I had thought that would seem consistent with other buildings similar to this in Des Moines, but anyway.
Anything else? Any other questions? Thank you, Jason. Is the applicant here? Could we please have him come forward? No applicant?
Guess not. I wasn't aware.
That's all right. That's all right. Since the applicant's not here, is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward. Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. Okay, likewise, seeing none. Is there a motion? Greg's moving staff. Any discussion?
I think it's great. It's going to advance Ingersoll, advance the streetscape. It's great.
I'll tell you one thing that I will talk about, and doesn't necessarily absolutely pertain to that. Will's comments, people ask me all the time, you have too many professionals on this board, and part of the reason why we have people like Will on the board is so that we get these sorts of questions asked and answered, and it's great as far as I'm concerned. So thank you, Will.
Would Greg have a friendly amendment to include the 1/1?
I agree, 1/1 is fine, but I think that they should have the choice if they want a 6/1. I don't personally like the 6/6, but I think they should be allowed to do whatever they want to, and seeing that we don't know what it is. 1/1's fine, 6/1's fine.
Does that change the recommendation at all, Mike? Okay. Everybody understand the motion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation again. Thank you. It carries. Number 6, request from KLM International, represented by Pastor Ken Linhart, for review and approval of a site plan under design guidelines and NPC districts on property located at 1802 Crocker Street to allow redevelopment of a site with a historic filling station having 1,008 square feet for a youth center affiliated with nearby Kingsway Cathedral. The subject property is owned by Planned Parenthood Mid-Iowa Foundation. Jason, you presenting on this one?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
aerial showing the subject property along Crocker Street, along the south side of Crocker Street, MLK, Interstate 235 to the north. The applicant, I'm sure that this is probably ringing a bell with a lot of you. We had seen a site plan before to do the filling station up in here, north of the cathedral building. This is all part of their site. This had always been where they had hoped to put it, but they had long delays in negotiation with Planned Parenthood, which this is the old former Planned Parenthood office building, parking, and then this was part of their parking. They were able to keep working on that. Why the building, you can actually see it in this aerial filling station building, has sat there. And now they're at a place where they've got an interest or ownership in the land and can move forward. So they're coming back now to do an NPC site plan for this area. This is in the local historic district for Sherman Hill. This was reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission last month and approved. And tonight is kind of their next step in the process. And the commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, approved the building being moved here, the construction of the foundation and some site improvements, but there's still work for the applicant to come back to review exterior modifications or repairs. So that's still ongoing. This is the subject property looking south at the corner of 18th and Crocker. Filling station building in its current location north of the cathedral building. Drawing of the building, was originally located a block from here on East Grand. Here's the site plan. So they're showing the building located in the south and east corner of the site. There is a drive approach here that would be removed and restored. Just a little extra bit of information. This actually was a filling station site. There was a gas station building there that was torn down in the early 80s, late 70s, before the establishment of the local historic district. I don't have the photograph with me, but I do have a photograph in the file of that building, and it was generally in this placement. It was a smaller building than this, and so that's how this driveway pattern functioned, because it was smaller and set a little further back. But anyway, so the building's here. They've got a couple parking stalls, a little basketball hoop, one-way access out to the alley. They are showing, they have not purchased, but at some point and they mentioned this to you the last time they were here for the site to the north, but to do kind of historic pumps out here, just kind of give speak to the building's past and to this site's past. And part of speaking to the past, what's typical of a filling station site historically, and we talked about this at the Historic Commission, not that this is a great thing, but gas stations historically were, paved lot line to lot line and huge drive approaches, back before we really had a lot of regulation. So working with the Historic Commission and the applicant, we were trying to balance giving a sense of that, and so that's why they're showing pavement here. The Historic Commission actually approved having the pavement come back and be right about through here, so you had a little more of a straight shot versus this jagged edge. But so we're trying to balance speaking to the buildings, the history of the site, the history of the building, the design of it, while still having some setbacks for the parking and a little bit of setback for the properties to the south and to the west. To the south here is a Union Hall building, so it's a semi-commercial use, but when you get over in here, it's pretty residential, so we felt that it was important to have some landscaping through this area and some green to soften that transition. I'll just cut to the chase. We are recommending approval, subject to compliance with the administrative requirements of the Permit and Development Center, compliance with Chapter 58 of the City Code, the Historic Preservation Ordinance, and then the provision of landscaping along the south perimeter of the site to the satisfaction of the planning administrator. Just getting back to that, softening that transition. You know, they have a fair amount of landscaping on site. They're including, there's some existing street trees, and they're also adding some. We just, you know, with this, and then also with the pavement coming back here, I think there's an opportunity to bring some of that back in through here, and we'll work with the applicant to make that happen.
Once again, Jake, this is site plan.
That's right. This is an allowed use. They're not required to have parking because it's part of the church campus, and parking is is based on the main assembly area. So there's no other design guidelines that we're waiving like we were with the other case, so it's very straightforward.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present? Could you please come forward, give us your name and address?
Todd Von Steen, PRG 118 Southeast 4th in Des Moines. The only comment I have is on page 5 and page 7. Staff is requesting that we landscape the south perimeter of the building, which backs up to the IBE Union Hall. My only request is that we not be required this is already budget constraint. It'd be great if we could just not have to worry about landscaping between a commercial use and a commercial use. And as Jason said, we are, the Historic Preservation Commission did request that we pull the landscaping back on the east side, about 3 feet back from the building plane. That's about the only comments I have.
Todd, let me ask you something. You're gonna have to pave this anyway, right? Is paving cheaper than putting in shrubs?
Well, that's all landscape. That's green back there. We're not paving the south perimeter. The south perimeter actually has a retaining wall already. Currently existing is a retaining wall on the south perimeter, about 20-inch tall, 24-inch tall retaining wall does line the back between the two properties. The retaining wall is on this property. So we're already in this. We have a buffer of some sort already that there's a elevation difference.
So you already have green space?
That is green space, except for where the basketball court is.
Okay.
So we just don't want to have to shrub it too.
Any other questions?
Yes, did the Historic Preservation Commission require you to have the landscaping back there, or was that not part of their purview?
No, that's just a staff recommendation. Actually, the Historic Preservation Commission, most of the discussion was there's already too much landscaping, because this would not have been historically this green. But I mean, I'm torn both ways. I like it green, but historically it's not as accurate as we probably should be.
Any other questions? Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward in favor of the application. Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward, give us your name and address.
Excuse me. My name's David Carlson. I live at 818 18th, but I got the mailing because of the building I own at 833 18th. I have 10 apartment buildings, about 120 units within a block and a half of here. And this is kind of the first I've heard of this. I didn't even know it went to the Historic Commission for this new site. And staff has referred to the campus of Kingsway. I've kind of been watching this. Is there a campus plan or something? I'm kind of watching this go, and it seems like I see people up on ladders, kids putting roofs on, and it's just kind of going. And now I hear they are buying Planned Parenthood, excuse me, on contract. And I see the walls around Planned Parenthood where the parking is falling over, and it just seems a little bizarre to me. The preservation aside, this is a youth center. If you look at the floor plan, there's about 600 square feet usable in there. And Wilkie House has a youth center, beautiful place. Oak Ridge has just spent $30 million, a lot of it on youth centers. This is gonna have a basketball
hoop I saw, is it right next to Crocker? It just, I don't know, I wonder what the campus is, what's happening. This is kind of spreading across Crocker into our neighborhood, and I already watched Smoky Row come in and take down 6 houses. And this is kind of creeping in on us, and I just get bad feelings. And I don't know if you can, what your powers are. I used to work in city planning. I'm an architect and a city planner. And I just get bad feelings about this. But I don't know what you can do but this is the first I've really seen that this, I didn't even know this site. And I talked to these people live right across from it. And then I talked to the physician that lives in the next house, and he was going to try to get here. He was shocked. And I talked to the house just south of the Union Hall, and they're renting it with an option to buy, and they didn't know about it. And everything else is kind of absentee. I don't know, I just have bad feelings about it.
Mike.
I guess that's all
Well, as far as the use of the property, I mean, the rezoning of this to NPC, neighborhood pedestrian commercial zoning, was at the neighborhood's request several years ago. So the fact that commercial use could go along Crocker Street was at, was at the request of the neighborhood.
Yeah, if it was a beauty shop or a accountant, but a youth center with 600 square feet and a basketball court outside, it just seems bizarre. That's not even a one-bedroom apartment, hardly.
But from an impact standpoint, it would be theoretically less intense use than a commercial use on the property.
I don't know. If it's a youth center, isn't there going to be more than 2 youths in it? I don't know. This just seems a little bizarre, just from everything I've seen. And you talk about a campus, you have a campus plan or that shows this is part of the campus. This is being bought on contract. That could end tomorrow.
It's a term we use to describe where the multiple properties that they own in the area. There isn't necessarily a campus plan.
But if you're saying parking is part of the campus plan, shouldn't there be a plan to it? Or I don't know. I just see this. Things just, every day you go up there and there's something different happening. And I'm not really impressed.
This is what's in front of the commission tonight, is the site plan itself and whether or not it's in conformance with the neighborhood pedestrian.
That's why I said I don't know, if you guys can do anything about it, but I just see, teenage kids putting roofs on and, windows open all winter and stuff. It's just not comfortable.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward, give us your name and address.
Hello, my name is Larry Sharp. I live at 563 28th Street. And my mother, Edith Sharp, lives right across the street at 1718 Crocker. And I can't really say I'm either for or against. All this is kind of new to me, so I'm just kind of coming here for informational. Now, I don't know if yet this is the final decision tonight, if you're going to pass it or not. But I would like to find out more about it. And also, I kind of feel like Dave there. We have the Wilkie House right across the street from my mother's house. That's a youth center. And the church is, they got the church there and they're buying other property around there. And I have seen the old gas station that they moved, that they plan on putting there, and it seems awful small. I wouldn't want to see this thing get rushed through and done tonight. I can't see the necessity of it, to be honest with you, with the Wilkie House across the street. And I'm kind of going along with Dave. You've done a lot more studying, but I'd like to find out more about it. My mom's across the street. I'm concerned about extra kids being in the neighborhood. We've got the Wilkie House there already. And I guess that's pretty much it.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I have a question.
All right, go ahead.
I guess for staff, did we have to notice surrounding?
Yeah, I mean, that's why they're here, because we did notice.
Okay, but we didn't receive any
consent cards or?
With site plans, we do not send a card.
Okay.
Because the thought is that for somebody to really make it, because it's not use related, it's design related, they need to see the design.
Sure.
And, I mean, this is an, excuse me, this is an allowed use for this area, or for the, for the zoning. So, our staff recommendations, taking that into consideration and just looking at the NPC design guidelines and other site plan requirements, and that's, what we're basing it. The concerns that are raised may be valid or not, but it's not any different than kind of when we hear, should we have multiple gas stations in an area that the zoning is allowed for it, or multiple coffee shops or whatever. So.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I just wondered too about the neighborhood association in that area. Are they apprised of?
It'd be part of the notice list, and then also they receive the agendas for the Historic Commission, and they have representation on the commission.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion? Tim?
I'd like to see the plan, as Dave asked. This could very well be an administrative building for the youth. It could be anything. I'm not, only 600 square feet.
Still looking for a motion. All right, Mike's moved staff. Any other discussion?
Yeah, they're trying to find a home for this building. I have nothing to do with this. I haven't talked to anybody, but I assume they're trying to find a home for this building. And it happens to be somewhat across the street. I share some of the neighbors' concerns, and this is not our purview, but their ability to execute. I'm glad they're saving that church, but that's been a slow process. This is not an inexpensive venture. And to try to add square footage, they're putting a basement in it, which it never had a basement to begin with. I'm pleased to hear that there used to be a gas station there, so it wasn't a home, so maybe a gas station is appropriate. In terms of use, I would look at this for the long term, not because they're not going to be there forever. So if they're indeed able to raise the money and locate the structure here, 10 years from now, it's not going to be a youth center in all likelihood. So I think our thinking is 10 years from now, is that an appropriate building? And could they have some kind of a business in that building? I think that's the question.
Mr. Chair?
Will?
I have a question I guess it's in the southwest corner with a basketball court. Has staff considered, there's a one-way sign, so there's the exit to, is that 19th Street? It's an alley. It still comes to the same question. Is there a safety issue with a basketball court and a vehicular access?
This is a drive parking area that, the applicant, a basketball hoop and a pole is not something that's part of a site plan review. They put it on there, so it's there for us to see, but it's not a designated playground, or, it's, I guess we didn't look at that closely from, as a playground. It's really more of a, here's a drive, some paving, and they put it there. So, I guess I would defer to Todd to explain how they see the site being operated with traffic. They have two stalls, one, the handicap stall. I don't think they're anticipating a lot of vehicle traffic, and that's why they're not worried about more parking on site. But I would I'd defer to the applicant to speak about programming, amounts of vehicle movement that they expect and that sort of thing.
I have another question for staff. If this passes and they never move the building, what does this mean to this piece of property?
The site plan?
The site plan. We're not changing zoning?
No, zoning stays the same. It just means we'd have another site plan in a file that was never acted on. A lot of development comes through our review and then never happens. So this.
Todd, did you have anything you wanted to add? I forgot to ask you for rebuttal time, so.
Thank you. I do appreciate Mr. Carlson's, I've known Dave for
many, many years. I appreciate his comments and Mr. Sharp's comments. And it's true, the building, this was a gas station. It's always been a gas station from what I can see on the Sanborn maps. It was torn down in 1979. In fact, the front facade of the building, from what some of the pictures I saw from Jason, was full of glass. And I think if we just look at the fact that the building is going in here, it's going into where a gas station was. I've also written spent the last 3 years writing the action plan, the 10-year action plan for Sherman Hill. On that, I didn't write it, but I was part of the group. And infill is always part of our conversation. And so we have good infill strategy here to put a gas station back where there was a gas station. And if by chance the use just does change, now we have another commercial building where there used to be a commercial building that could be opened up for a beauty salon, an architect office. You know, there's all kinds of uses this building would be fabulous for. So I do appreciate everybody's comments. As far as the basketball court goes, we're only talking 2 vehicles and 1 is handicapped. I think the traffic through that one-way alley, that one-way exit is going to be so minimal that I don't see I just don't see a security issue there. And at this point, the Planned Parenthood building, which they've purchased with this or on contract, is supposed to be education and administration. This does give a place and another place for the Oak Ridge children to go. So we've given the children in the neighborhood, which Sherman Hill has embraced Oak Ridge and wants to give the Oak Ridge children more opportunities. So all they've done is embraced Oak Ridge and given the children another opportunity for an activity. That's about all I really have to say about that. I just don't think there's the only reason there's even 2 stalls is because when you have 1 handicap, you got to have 1 standard. So, I mean, we really just wanted to place a handicap stall in there, but the other one is just because it's part of the site guidelines.
Okay.
Does that help?
Any questions? Yeah. Apparently. Thank you.
Thanks.
Once again, just a couple comments. There was a question about the use. The NPC zoning district would guide the uses that could be allowed in the building. As I said, the neighborhood requested NPC zoning on this property and supported that rezoning in the past. As far as use of the property, I mean, there's 2 parking spaces there. That the reason we have a site plan review is to ensure that there's compliance with the site plan. So the ability to just park cars all over the site is really regulated by this site plan. It would ultimately be prohibited and be considered a zoning violation to be parking cars all over this property. So just another use, a commercial use coming into to use the building would either have to comply with the parking arrangement that is shown on this or come in for a plan amendment, which would be Plan and Zoning Commission review again. Just a change of use? No. But how they utilize the property as far as parking, where the parking's located, all those things would have to comply with this plan or come back to you. Overall, what's before you tonight is whether or not this complies with site plan design guidelines that are in Chapter 82, not the zoning of the property, not the use, as long as it's consistent with what's allowed under the zoning.
One last question. How long is a site plan valid before it becomes void? In other words, when do they have to start construction before the site plan is void?
I believe technically it's 2 years.
Okay.
Pardon?
270 days or is that? Wow.
We'd have to confirm that. There is a timeline on site plan for compliance, yeah. Building permits are a year, so if they pull a permit, they'd have a year to complete or extend.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and call it to a vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation carries. Oh, I'm sorry, Shirley, I didn't see you.
Questions from the neighbors.
Okay, all right. Shirley is in opposition. I apologize, Shirley. Committee and Directors report.
I guess one thing real quick, the Tomorrow Plan held their 3 public meetings this week. It was really well attended. I believe they had over 200 or 250 people at the meetings combined between the 3. It was a kickoff of the kind of existing conditions, and if you took our existing land use zoning districts and projected that growth that's is occurring today and on out into 2050 for the population growth that's expected, I think it was somewhat of an alarming scenario map that people saw at those meetings, a little bit concerned about how far or how much land would be consumed under that scenario. But ultimately, the next phase of this is actually coming up with some alternative growth scenarios to what was presented this week. So that the Tomorrow Plan website, I really encourage you to visit the MPO's website and the Tomorrow Plan website. There are a number of survey tools and discussion forums that are set up to discuss those alternative growth scenarios. And the key is we have to get discussion going on this topic. And so I really encourage the commission, you are, the city's Planning and Zoning Commission, and we really encourage you to participate in that process and share your thoughts with that. You do have an understanding of impacts of growth and zoning decisions and development decisions and the impacts that has on a community and a region. So we really encourage you to be involved in that. Please check out that website. I believe Dave Carlson is also here as a representative of the Des Moines Waterworks Board, and he obviously wanted to just present one quick thing to you, and then I'll turn it over.
Yeah, this is cool and exciting. Pass this around. I'm chairman of the Des Moines Waterworks Board of Trustees right now, and January of last year, 2011, I told the director that one of the priorities, I want to deal with the park plan. And I don't know if you've seen anything on TV or in the paper of what we're doing. And I just wanted you to read this in City View, and we're going to have our staff come in here and talk to you. And we're just getting organized now. And we want you to help us and your input. So I just wanted to say that. And I think this could be tremendous.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, I remember that there was supposed to be a relationship too with, are you working at all with the Des Moines schools with their?
We're hiring. It'll tell in there. All we've had so far is we had a competition. The graduate school at Iowa State University helped us. We put up a website. It'll explain to you, we had like 40-some people. We put out 50,000 in prizes, and we've got Sasaki. They're from London, but they have offices in the U.S. and RDG, and then an environmental consultant in Minnesota, I think it is. Okay. And we're just starting to get organized so we can pull all the partners together, okay. School board, park boards, everything like that. But we've got a consultant, and we're going to start this.
That'll be exciting.
And
I guess what I was thinking of is the students actually being involved in helping through the planning process. That's just, from my distant memory of, maybe what some goals were.
The Waterworks has been taking care of the Botanical Center.
Right.
And what you're seeing happening there is because the Waterworks really want to see Des Moines better. And the Waterworks is going into it'll be a private foundation within a year and a half. And they've raised a lot of money. And it's going to be cool.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. All of this could be good for Des Moines. Thank you.
Mike, anything else?
No.
May I say something? I don't hear good, and so I let my son do the talking. But I've been in that neighborhood I'm telling my age, but 56 years, my husband and I, and before that, I was there at the brick building, y'all are too young, on 17th and Crocker. So I've been in that neighborhood. My point that I wanted to discuss was, and my understanding, my address is 1718 Crocker. your your lot that you want is 1802. So is that enough space? Reason I'm asking, the gentleman that just talked, he is on the corner on the opposite side of the street than I am. And when the Union Hall has a meeting, the cars are parked clear from Crocker, clear down to his place. And on both sides of the street. And people have to park where they can get a place. So and I'm worried that children that go to the youth place, they need another light up there by the restaurant, because they run across there and the traffic is very, very,
That's right.
yeah. So that's what I wanted to say.
Ma'am,
And
frankly, that's more appropriately handled by traffic and transportation. I'd be talking to them. Seriously.
well, I didn't mean to be the
No,
last one
no.
talking, but
I understand your
I'm a
concern.
Gabby person, and I just had to say what I was thinking.
I understand your concern.
Thank you.
But maybe your staff can tell her how to visit this traffic.
Yep, you bet. Greg, you have anything? Or no?
We're still working on signs.
Correct.
Sign everywhere, the sign? Yeah. We're still looking for somebody for CIP. Jack looks at me and goes, oh, yeah, okay. And what was the other one? Enterprise Zone. We're looking for somebody to serve on the Enterprise Zone, too. They've been hounding me, and I keep telling Mike to remind me. We have a chair on the Enterprise Zone. Anybody interested? Okay, think about it.
What's the difference between
There, I believe that the economic development staff was going to be contacting you to provide you information on the duties and responsibilities on it. Jeffrey Johansson used to serve on that committee. And ultimately, it's, I believe, just some recommendations that go forward as far as, generally in enterprise zones in the city, for example, there are breaks on sales tax, for example, on construction materials, things like that that occur within an enterprise zone. So I'll let the economic development staff provide you with that update. I was under the impression they already had, so.
Kay Lozier had contacted me, but I haven't. Okay. The other thing, 17th of this month, that's when we're meeting with the city manager. So if anybody's interested, just let us know. We got another meeting before that, but I just want to give you a heads
Friday
up.
after the second meeting.
And if anybody wants to serve on this thing for ARP, let us know on that as well. Anything else? We're adjourned.
Something old for something new. Change your view. Heard you moved out west. Rumors, gossip, and tabloid papers said it was for the best. I found out they were wrong a little later. Follow the sun on the rise.